action item. So we're going to go ahead with our board training. Rebecca?
Yes.
I wanted to recognize you. Thank you for coming. Gretchen, you want to come on up? I did speak with our chair, who unfortunately is at the graduation meeting or whatever that's going on at the high school, and he wanted you to participate as our resident representative. So,
yes, no problem.
For purposes of the meeting, since this is not a public meeting, the public is welcome to stay, and obviously we have no issue with that. But we're going to go ahead and do our board training, and Bill Elias is our board trainer, so we're going to go ahead and kick that off. So, Bill, if you want to get us started.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name, as you know, is Bill Elias. I'm, for lack of a better word, a consultant to the Housing Authority. And sometimes I feel like an employee, not a consultant.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. So, Charlie, it's not a public meeting, so we're going to have to. You're welcome to sit and stay, but it's not, since it's not a public forum, we don't record those typically.
Okay, so just
you're welcome to stay.
Just to be clear, I'm allowed to stay. I can take notes, but no audio or video recording is going to be allowed.
It's not a public meeting, so, but we're allowing the public to continue.
Right, so I'm just clarifying, I'm not allowed to record audio or video.
This is because it's not a public meeting.
Correct.
You're welcome to stay. We're allowing people to stay while the board training is going on, but we do not have a quorum, so it's not a public meeting.
Right, I understand it's not a public meeting, but if I run into you on the street, I can record it. So just because it's not a public meeting doesn't mean you have to bar me from being able to record it.
I don't recall me saying that. But, I mean, I'm not. This isn't confrontational, but this is not a public meeting.
I understand.
But you're welcome to stay and view the training as it goes on.
Am I allowed to record video of it?
We do not typically record non-public events. It's not a public meeting, so we don't typically do that.
Well, it's first time for everything, so
right.
If I'm allowed to, I'd like to. If I'm not allowed, I'll respect that, and I won't.
Yeah, it's not a public meeting, so we don't typically record that.
I understand you don't typically record
right.
it, but I'm here, and I would like to record it. And so if I'm allowed to, I would like to.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but again, it's not something that we typically allow. So, all right, Bill, you want to kick off the training?
Sure. Again, welcome everybody. My intention tonight is to give you an understanding of the basis of public housing from a legal point of view, from a historical point of view. And we're going to begin with the United States Housing Act of 1937. We're going to take a look at the annual contributions contract that you have with HUD. We'll look at state law. And last, a very interesting decision of an administrative law judge against the Commission of the Passaic Housing Authority that was taken in 1990 or 1992. It's just golden, and it points out your basic responsibilities as commissions of housing authorities. So I'm interested to present that to you. I'm going to be very lawyerly tonight, and I'm not a lawyer. All right, but I've always been of the opinion that a well-read person can understand what the law says. I might not be able to prepare a case for trial, but I can understand what the law says nonetheless. But we have a lawyer here tonight, and Joe, if I say anything wrong, please correct me. And if any of you have any questions along the way, please interrupt me and I'll try to answer your question. If I don't have an answer, I'll make one up. As I go through this package in front of you, follow the page numbers at the top right corner, the ones I've written in, the top right corner of the page. Okay. So, question, beginning with the question, what is the prevalent fact of life in America in 1937? What's going on in 1937?
Depression just ended.
Well, it didn't end.
Oh, was it toward the end now?
It was a depression.
War was on the cusp of starting, right?
On the cusp of starting, but it hadn't started yet. Okay, there were rumblings of that from Europe, but the prevalent fact of life in 1937 was the depression.
Yeah.
And the Roosevelt administration is trying its darndest to invent programs to, as they said, prime the economic pump, right? To get money flowing in the community, get people back to work, get manufacturing turned up and so forth, people buying stuff, to revivify the economy. And we have in front of the United States Housing Act of 1937. And follow along with me under an act, which is the stated purpose of the act, to provide financial assistance to the states and political subdivisions thereof for the elimination of unsafe and insanitary housing conditions, for the eradication of slums, for the provision of decent, safe, and sanitary dwellings. That's where that term decent, safe, and sanitary comes from, huh? That you see all over the place. Dwellings for families of low income, and for the reduction of unemployment and the stimulation of business activities. That's why the Housing Act of 1937 was passed. Section 1, that is hereby declared to be the policy of the United States to promote the general welfare of the nation by employing its funds and credit as provided in this act to assist the several states and their political subdivisions to alleviate present and recurring unemployment. The more cynical among us will say that the Roosevelt administration really didn't have any interest in public housing. What they really had the interest in was stimulating economic activity. All right? And they thought they could do that by using the full faith and credit of the government to provide funds for the construction and operation of public housing. Put people back to work and get money flowing in the economy again. And to remedy the unsafe and unsanitary housing conditions and the acute shortage of decent, safe, and sanitary housing. Now it talks about families of low income here. Nowadays we have 5 eligibility factors. Yet an applicant for public housing has to meet those 5 eligibility factors. Number 1, they have to qualify as a family, as defined by the Housing Authority. And that's a very interesting history that goes along with that. Number 2, they have to meet an income limit. Their gross income cannot exceed 50% of the median income for the area. Number 3, each member of the family must have a Social Security number and disclose that number to the Housing Authority. Number 4, the applicant must be a citizen or an eligible immigrant to the United States. And 5, the adults in the family must sign a form that allows the Housing Authority to look into their background and gather information on them. 5 eligibility factors. Under definitions in section 2.
Excuse me a minute. What was number 5?
The applicant has to sign a form that allows the Housing Authority to look into their background and gather information on them. From banks and employers and so forth, and so on, government agencies.
I understand that one.
Under section 2 of the Act, the term low rent housing is now called low income housing. Means decent, safe, and sanitary dwellings within the financial reach of families of low income. Now, there was a time when public housing first started that housing authorities were allowed to charge what they called an economic rent. For example, if the operating expenditures of a housing authority in any given year of operation were estimated to be $100,000, then the housing authority is allowed to collect in rent $100,000 from its tenants. They could skew that any way they wanted to. They could say they could charge $5 a month from families of very low income and $15 a month from families of higher income, but they were allowed to charge collect enough rent to pay their operating expenses. And that all changed in 1972. Senator Ted Brooke from Massachusetts introduced into law, and it was passed, the so-called Brooke Amendment, which said that no tenant in public housing could pay more than 25% of their income for rent. That's since been changed to 30% of income. And there are proposals now by the department to change it to 35% of income. Page 2. Up at the top of the page, the term families of low income means families who are in the lowest income group and who cannot afford to pay enough to cause private enterprise in their locality or metropolitan area to build an adequate supply of decent, safe, and sanitary dwellings for their use. Somebody in around late 70s or early 80s asked themselves the question, what's a family? What is a family? Now, we kind of take for granted a family is parents and children, and we go our merry way. But that's not always the case. Okay? So HUD tried to define what a family is. And the first definition they came up with, a family is 2 or more persons related by blood, marriage, or operation of law. That means myself and my mother and father are a family. Myself and my brother are a family. Okay? Myself and my wife are a family. Myself and my adopted child are a family because that's a relation by operation of law. Blood, marriage, or operation of law. And the American Civil Liberties Union got a hold of that definition and said, whoa, wait a second. With that definition, you're denying same-sex partners the opportunity to live in public housing because they're not related by blood, marriage, or operation of law. To two spinster women who have been teachers all their life, never married, retired from the local school system. They've known each other all their lives, and they want to spend their last years living together. Those people can't live in public housing. We're going to sue you, HUD. So HUD backed down. And they developed the next definition. Family means two or more persons related by blood, marriage, or operation of law, or who have evidenced a stable family relationship. So two unrelated persons who have been living together. And what evidence is there for that? Well, they have a joint bank account, they have a joint address for many years, whatever. So a family of two or more persons related by blood, marriage, or operation of law, or who have evidence of a stable family relationship. And the Southern Baptist Convention got up in arms and they said, wait a second, you're using public monies to subsidize a sinful relationship. We're going to sue you. And HUD said, no, we're not going to promulgate a definition of family anymore. From now on, family can be defined by the Housing Authority. And if anybody's going to bring a lawsuit against them, it's going to be against the law, the Housing Authority, not against HUD, okay? Well, let me tell you what the present definition of family is. It's amazing that this brouhaha has arisen over a simple word like family, okay? This is the definition we use today, and it's not a definition, by the way. It says to be eligible for admission, an applicant must qualify as a family. Family is defined by HUD, includes but is not limited to the following. Regardless of actual or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, or marital status. That's the so-called equal access clause, okay? And it accommodates the LGBT community. A single person may be a family who may be an elderly person, disabled person, near elderly person, or any other single person, or a group of persons residing together. Such group includes, but is not limited to, a family with or without children, an elderly family, a near elderly family, a disabled family, a displaced family, or the remaining member of a tenant family. The PHA has the discretion to determine if any other group of persons qualifies as a family. It's a non-definition. The term family includes all of those people, and the way I understand it, it excludes almost no one. It could be a single person, group of persons living together, without regard to perceived or actual sexual orientation, gender identity, or marital status. Page 3, at the top of page 3. Section 3, there is hereby created in the Department of the Interior, what? And under the general supervision of the Secretary thereof, a body corporate of perpetual duration to be known as the United States Housing Authority. The ultimate predecessor of HUD was the United States Housing Authority. And it went through several permutations thereafter. It was originally attached to the Department of Interior, and it wasn't until 1965 with the HUD Act that the Department of Housing and Urban Development was created as a cabinet-level agency. And it incorporated the Federal Housing Administration into it, incorporated the Federal Insurance Administration into it, and several other small agencies and administrations. So the Housing Act of 1937 is the groundwork for all that we do in public housing. Jump up to page 6. Section 10. The authority, and that's the United States Housing Authority, okay, that federal administration attached to the Department of Interior. The authority may make annual contributions, I'll explain what they are, to public housing agencies to assist in achieving and maintaining the low rent character of their housing projects. The annual contributions for any such project shall be fixed in uniform amounts and shall be paid in such amounts over a fixed period of years. The United States Housing Authority would loan money to the public housing agency, and the public housing agency would pay that money back over a period of generally 40 years. And it's a funny thing, the federal government would give the money to the Housing Authority to pay back the United States Housing Authority for the loan. Generally, the loan period was for 40 years. Now, projects were being built in 1939, 1940, 1941. All of a sudden, in 1980, people got these contracts expiring. 40-year period is coming up. we're gonna lose all this public housing. What are we gonna do? And HUD promulgated a regulation which said that if you accept operating subsidy from the federal government, it automatically extends your contract with us for 10 years. Now, what housing authority can exist without operating subsidy? You're gonna have to accept it. And it automatically extends the contract with HUD for another 10 years. So when you hear the term annual contributions contract, it's the contract that sets forth the financial relationship between the United States Housing Authority, or now HUD, and the public housing agency. We'll make payments of X number of dollars a year over a period of 4 years. And it says as much further on in Section 10, the authority, the United States Housing Authority, shall embody the provisions for such annual contributions in a contract, guaranteeing their payment over a fixed period. Jump over to page 11. Before HUD would approve an application for the loan to build low-income public housing, they demanded that the housing authority enter into a contract with the local municipality that created it. It's called a cooperation agreement. And the municipality, for its part, will provide the same level of services to the housing authority as it would any other property owner in town, even though the housing authority is not paying full taxation. It's paying payment in lieu of taxes. It's paying a reduced payment, which is computed as 10% of shelter rent. Now, shelter rent is the rent that the housing authority collects for the shelter, for the building, okay? And it's rent minus the cost of utilities, and then 10% of that amount. So the municipality is taking a beating on taxation, all right? But they, nonetheless, they say, oh, it's okay, we're gonna accept what you're giving us, and we'll provide the same level of services to you. So that was a precondition for HUD to give money to the housing authority. And finally, on page 18, Section 30, this act may be cited as the United States Housing Act of 1937. And again, it establishes the groundwork for what housing authorities do. Next, we're going to turn to that annual contributions contract. And Part A of that contract sets forth the financial arrangement between the housing authority and HUD. HUD agrees to pay a certain amount of money in fixed payments over a period of 40 years. And basically from that point on, as a condition of receiving that money, the housing authority agrees to do certain things. On page 24, section 3 at the bottom of the page, we read what the mission of the Department of Housing and Urban Development is. HUD shall administer the federal public and Indian housing program for the provision of decent, safe, and sanitary, there's that phrase again, housing to eligible families. We talked about the eligibility requirements for living in public housing in accordance with this ACC, in accordance with this annual contributions contract, and all applicable statutes, executive orders, and regulations. HUD shall provide maximum responsibility and flexibility to housing authorities in making administrative decisions. Given the regulations with which the housing authority has to deal, it doesn't appear that they have maximum flexibility. Most of those regulations say you must do this and you must not do that.
You shall, right, you shall.
So HUD shall provide maximum responsibility and flexibility to the housing authorities in making administrative decisions within all applicable statutes, executive orders, regulations, and this ACC. HUD shall provide annual contributions to the housing authority in accordance with the same. Section 4 talks about the mission of the housing authority. The housing authority shall at all times develop and operate each project solely for the purpose of providing decent, safe, and sanitary housing. Well, you've seen that phrase 3 times now. For eligible families in a manner that promotes serviceability, economy, efficiency, and stability of the projects and the economic and social well-being of the tenants.
Okay, safe. Meaning safe. Meaning that we shouldn't have to live like we do with all these people hanging out where we live at, right?
Well, I would take it that, that safe would mean in general terms that you're safe from predation. Yeah.
Yeah, because,
Criminality, sure.
yeah, because I have to call the cops every night,
Yep.
almost out there. So that means we should be having security around here, right? Right or wrong? Somebody talk to me.
Well, no, it means that you have the same right as any member living in New Brunswick to
Right.
have police address criminality
Yeah.
in the property or any other area, just like any other citizen. It doesn't mean that somebody will be sitting outside your unit. There's no one sitting outside every house in New Brunswick.
No, there's nobody sitting
So
up there.
it means that you can't be, you shouldn't be receive less attention than anyone else who lives within the city limits, and that the city will provide that policing of the components. It doesn't mean that you're not gonna have to call if somebody's outside of his house or my house or his house or his house. You still call the police.
Yeah, I still-
But it just means that they're gonna respond, and they have to, you have the same right to that. You have the same right to that. Go ahead, Bud.
Okay, go on to page 25. Section 5 is a covenant to develop and operate, again in accordance with law and regulations. Section 6 refers to that cooperation agreement, which we talked about just now, that you enter into a cooperation agreement with the local municipality. Section 7 and 8 say basically that the housing authority can't demolish or dispose of any project or any portion thereof without getting the prior permission of HUD. You can't encumber the property. In other words, you can't use the property as collateral for a loan without getting the prior permission of HUD. And to evidence that covenant, you sign a declaration of trust with HUD, which in fact gives HUD first lien on the property. They have to say what's going to be done with that property. Page 27. Section 11, the Housing Authority shall prepare and have approved by the Board of Commissioners, you gentlemen, an operating budget for each year. There was a time in the not-too-distant past when every housing authority had to submit an annual operating budget to my office at HUD, and it had to be approved. That's not done anymore. There's a sort of a half operating budget requirement that the state has now. Section 12, civil rights requirements. You comply with all statutory, regulatory, and executive orders relating to civil rights. Page 28, bottom of the page, section 13, you're to maintain adequate insurance, comprehensive general liability, fire and peril insurance, automobile insurance, fidelity bond, directors and officers, omissions and errors, and on and on and on.
So that's for the
Same
housing
type of
authority.
insurance that a business would provide for itself. Really. I'm sorry, Gretchen.
I said that's for the housing
That's
authority
the
to
housing
have.
authority, right. Page 29, top of the page, section 14B. No funds of any project may be used to pay any compensation for the services of members of the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. You could be recompensed as travel expenses, but you can't take a salary for your services.
When you go to do stuff.
Section 15, the Housing Authority has to maintain complete and accurate books of account, which is
Can't
subject to
get
audit.
paid.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah.
so how does, like, NYCHA work? Or some of those larger authorities? I know that their commissioners are actually
Commissioners?
employees, right? Or are they not? Because I know they're compensated.
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know how they got around that.
okay,
Who's that?
like NYCHA.
It-
Actually,
Their commissioners actually have their salary
In New York.
in New York.
Mhm.
When they go to work there.
I know no housing authority in Jersey.
No, I don't, yeah, no.
No way.
There might
But
be
I know they are. I
There
mean,
might be something in New York state law which allows for that to happen. I don't know.
or maybe on a separate fund, maybe they don't use HUD funds to pay them, I don't know.
should we
Maybe.
state funds?
Yeah, or it's state statute, maybe that's why,
Yeah.
because they're so large. Okay, interesting.
At the bottom of page 29, there is a definition of a default. When does a housing authority default on their contractual responsibilities? Look at the last line on that page. A substantial default is a serious and material violation of one or more of the covenants contained in this ACC. Events of substantial default shall include, but shall not be limited to, any of the following occurrences. 1, failure to maintain and operate the project under this ACC in a decent, safe, and sanitary manner. 2, the disposition or encumbrance of any project. Disposition means sale of any project or portion thereof without HUD approval. 3, the failure of the housing authority to comply with any civil rights requirements applicable to the housing authority and to the project. 4, abandonment of any project by the housing authority. 5, failure to carry out modernization or development in a timely and efficient and effective manner. And 6, termination of tax exemption, termination of that cooperation agreement. All of those instances constitute a substantial default. And further on down that page at paragraph E, upon the occurrence of a substantial default or the expiration of any applicable cure period provided by HUD, the housing authority shall convey to HUD title to the project, and 2, deliver possession and control of the project to HUD. That's actually happened, and I'll talk about a case later on.
On number 5.
Yeah.
That depends on HUD's allocation of funds, right, for modernization?
I'm sorry.
The modernization, what is it?
No.
Failure to carry out
Modernization
modernization.
or
Yeah,
development
that
of
depends on
development.
HUD's allocation of funds.
No. So that depends on if you get a, like, Hope 6 grant,
Yeah.
and you say, I'm gonna do the following things for a Hope 6 grant.
Yeah.
HUD gives you the money, you fail to do the following
Yeah,
things.
that's what I'm saying.
Within
It all
that
depends
time
on the fund you receive from HUD.
Well, no, it depends on your failure to do what you said you were gonna do with the funds you received from HUD.
Yeah, I know, but in order to do that, you still have to.
Yes, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
That's not just coming out of the blue,
Yeah,
it has to be a
yeah,
failure.
yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
You could be in default by missing deadlines,
Oh,
or,
okay.
a long period of time. You could be in default by spending money in an inefficient fashion, by doing things for a lot of money when you could have got the same thing done for less money, less efficiently, you know. All right, page 31. Very interesting section, section 19, which defines a conflict of interest. And it says basically that the housing authority can't enter into any kind of contractual relationship with the following people. And number 1, under A11, any present or former member or officer of the governing body of the housing authority, or any member of the officer's immediate family. Now, it's not uncommon to find that the governing body will appoint a commissioner to the housing authority. He's a stand-up guy, he's involved in community activities, he's always been around, helping out, looking for the good of the community. He owns a lot of real estate in town. He takes his seat as commissioner, and he owns a lot of real estate, he finds out, that's subsidized by the housing authority under the Section 8 Housing Voucher Program. In conflict, right there. Because he has a legitimate interest in getting as much money as he can from his property, and he also has another legitimate interest for the housing authority to keep expenses down. So when an issue comes up, well, how does he vote? He's in conflict, okay? What do you do in a situation like that? This is not an uncommon situation. Maybe Joe knows more about them than I do, but when I was director of the Office of Public Housing, it came up once in a while. First thing you do is you don't hide it. You spread it on the minutes of the housing authority. Commissioner Smith, I'm in conflict, number 1. And this is the extent of my conflict, and until this conflict is resolved, I'm going to recuse myself from voting on any issue that has a bearing on my properties. And then number 2, you send a waiver request into HUD. And we used to look upon these things rather favorably. I mean, you explain the situation, you cite the law, the applicable law, you cite the benefits that would accrue if the waiver were granted, you cite the deficits that would accrue if the waiver were not granted, and you ask HUD to make a decision. And I think generally HUD is kind of kindly disposed to removing the waiver. But they probably will tell you that from this point on, even though the conflict of interest has been waived, you should recuse yourself from voting on matters that are in conflict with your interest. Okay.
So the waiver doesn't remove the conflict?
No, I guess not. No, the conflict still exists.
Right.
You can just sort of stay on the board.
He can stay on the board. Okay.
And you say it's recused, not abstain. So
What's
there's
the
a difference. Well, recused, know, in my mind, recuse is not ask questions, not involved, not
Not getting
completely
involved at all,
removed.
that's what I mean.
Abstain, you listen, you can be, I want to abstain from this because I have right. So that's my interpretation. I don't know what the legal interpretation of that is, but that's just the layman's
By
thought.
recuse, I mean you don't get involved in those things at all.
So the waiver doesn't,
The waiver lets you stay on the board, Bill says, but you still have to recuse yourself from the matter,
from that matter.
from that matter. Because if HUD doesn't grant a waiver, you might have to leave the board.
Yeah, you might as well leave the board.
That's interesting. But so what other matter would, I'm trying to think of what you could vote on if you're being
If I
recused
own
from
a
that
Section
matter.
8 if I'm a commissioner and I own a Section 8 property,
Right,
I'm a
right.
Section 8 landlord, I think to be recused.
You're not gonna be able to vote on the budget, you're not
I
gonna be able to
don't
vote on,
discuss anything about Section 8 at all.
Right.
right.
Because ultimately, it has an effect on my interests as a landlord.
I see
No
what you're
matter
saying,
what
John.
it is.
It's broader, because it affects the budget.
Yeah, you're
It
not gonna,
affects the
so
fair
what are you
market
gonna be able
rents.
to vote on?
Where we are, how are you gonna
When it
write?
comes to Section 8, nothing.
Nothing.
But
Even the fair adoption of HUD fair market rents.
Well, that's
is
what I
Section
mean,
8.
so the
Yeah.
admin, you're not gonna be able to vote on the admin plan, because it's part of the Section 8.
No.
You're not gonna be able to budget, because that
No.
includes Section 8 money. You're not, I mean, what are you gonna be able to vote
Adoption
on?
of payment standards, no,
You can't vote on payment of bills,
no.
because of Section
You
8.
vote on other issues, you
Well,
vote on
you-
public
Well,
housing,
okay.
You could
You're on
recuse
public housing
as
Right.
public
you vote on
housing.
personnel issues.
Huh,
Or you abstain from the.
because the
Section 8.
waiver didn't waive you from that. All it did
No.
was recognize, HUD's waiver
All it
just
does is let you
recognized
stay on
it.
the
All
board.
right.
You understand, right?
Yeah, I know, I understand, yep.
That's interesting.
And it goes on to define a conflict of interest in more precise terms.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, the Housing Authority can't enter into a contract with you as a commissioner, with a member of the governing body, or any member of your family, and on and on and on. Okay, where are we?
31?
31 section.
All right, go up to page 36. Here's that cooperation agreement that we talked about before. And on page 38, we read at paragraph 5.
Frank is small, huh?
Page 38, paragraph 5. Go down to the third line up from that bottom of that paragraph. The municipality,
Right.
without cost or charge to the local authority or the tenants of such project, shall, A, furnish or cause to be furnished to the local authority and the tenants of such project public services and facilities of the same character and to the same extent as are furnished from time to time without cost or charge to other dwellings and inhabitants in the municipality.
So that goes back to your question. So you have to be treated the same exact way of any other person. It's not just like, oh, that's the public housing. They get treated,
Right.
everyone has to be treated the same.
Right,
to the municipality.
Yes, within the municipality, not
Right.
project, not street,
Same
not
services.
location.
right.
Yeah.
All right, I'm on page 44.
Jump ahead.
There was an annual contributions
Joe.
contract for public housing, there's also an annual contribution contract for the Section 8 voucher program. And the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, the emphasis in HUD shifts from public housing to Section 8 housing. As a matter of fact, I think, if I could read between the lines, that HUD would love to do away with public housing and turn it all into Section 8 housing. All right.
That was 74?
Hmm?
74? Section 8
Yeah,
program started in
74.
72 or 73?
74, I thought.
74?
I remember being called to Arlington, Virginia in 1974. And there was a HUD-held project which had an enormous auditorium in it, and there must have been 150 of us from all around the country. And one guy telling us about the Section 8 existing housing certificate program. And we were there for 4 days.
Oh, wow.
That was 1974. I believe it was the time of the air controllers strike, air traffic controllers strike. And I
Now, that was
national-
certificate, not voucher, right? That was
Certificate program.
Right.
just certificate.
And I mean, with National Airport, I get on New York Air to fly back to Newark. Remember New York Air?
Air, what the heck is that?
You never heard of that?
Well,
No, that's before my time.
We're seated, and the pilot gets on the intercom and he
They were
says,
cutting edge in
I
1974.
got good news and I got bad news. He says, the bad news is we're gonna be sitting on the runway here for an hour. The good news is the New York Air happy hour just started. 3 drinks. What do you think?
Was that when the smoking section on a plane was like the curtain?
Yeah.
They would close the curtain and be like, all right, this is the smoking section. That's great.
All right, so there's another contract for the Section 8 voucher program. It's not as extensive as that for public housing. On page 45 of Section 4, it obligates HUD to make payments, annual contributions again, not to amortize a loan or a bond issue, but simply to pay expenses.
Yep.
For each housing authority fiscal year, paragraph B, HUD will pay the housing authority the amount approved by HUD to cover housing assistance payments and housing fees for administration of the program.
As appropriated by Congress.
Yeah, which is a prorated amount nowadays. What's the current proration, John?
Underneath the current CR, I think it's in the 80s.
In the 80s, 81?
And on the, well, it might be 88, but on the admin side, it's, I think it's 78 or 80. It's much lower for the admin side.
What John is pointing out is that
You don't get a dollar for a
the
dollar.
housing authority is not getting the amount of money that it was supposed to get.
Right.
It's getting a prorated amount of that amount of money, and that's been going on for a good, I don't know, 10 years, 12 years.
12 years, about 12 years.
In section 10, HUD requirements, the housing authority must comply and must require owners to comply with the United States Housing Act of 1937, all regulations and other requirements, including any amendments or changes in the law or HUD requirements. Every time a new administration takes office in Washington, they want to put their stamp on the law and regulations, and the regulations change. A very, very frustrating experience, believe me, from my point of view. And the law is one thing, but the regulations are another. The law says you can only provide low-income public housing to eligible families, all right? That gives rise to something like this. This is 500 pages of purple prose. This is the policy of the Housing Authority written pursuant to law and regulation that determines the relationship between who can live in public housing and what they must do when they're in public housing. And this is only one of the 3 ring binders I have in my office. There's another one for the Section 8 program. There's another one for procurement. There's another one for personnel policies. On and on and on and on and on. And these things will change from time to time. And a new book has to be written. B10B, the Housing Authority must comply with its HUD-approved administrative plan and the HUD-approved funding applications. C, the Housing Authority must use program forms required by HUD. And D, the Housing Authority must proceed expeditiously. On page 46, there's another definition of a default, which is a lot simpler than we looked at before. HUD can take possession of the Section 8 program in cases of default. Any questions so far? You guys are being very good to me. All right, turn if you will to page 48. This is the state local redevelopment and housing law. What we have so far is a federal law, the Housing Act of 1937, as amended dozens of times, which allows Congress to appropriate funds for the construction and operation of low-income public housing and Section 8 housing. Okay, that's all we have. No housing authority has yet been created. All right? Just have the law that says Congress can do this if we can find a housing authority someplace. All right? So in order for a housing authority to be created, the state had to pass a law allowing housing authorities to be created. And then still that's not enough. A municipality who wants public housing or Section 8 funds has to create a housing authority to enter into a contract with the federal government to get the money. So this is a law in New Jersey which was amended considerably, which allows housing authorities to be created. On page 48, you find a declaration of purpose. There exist and have existed and persist in various communities of this state conditions of deterioration in housing, commercial and industrial installations, public services and facilities, and other physical components and supports of community life, and improper or lack of proper development, which results from forces which are amenable to correction and amelioration by a concerted effort of responsible public bodies. And without this public effort, are not likely to be corrected or ameliorated by private efforts. So the amelioration, the making better, can come about by redevelopment, or it can come about by the construction of low-income housing. The first part of this state law concerns the Housing Authority as a redevelopment agency. On page 64, that part of the law concerns the Housing Authority as a housing authority. Look at section 12A-17,
64.
page 64.
Yeah, I'm on 64. Okay, right here.
Accept that.
It reads, "The governing body of any county or municipality, as there are county housing authorities, may by ordinance or by resolution, in the case of a county whose charter does not provide for the adoption of ordinances, the governing body may create a body corporate in politic to be known as the Housing Authority of the City of New Brunswick," inserting the name of the county or municipality. So you are a creature of a municipal ordinance. The federal government didn't create you, state law didn't create you, the City of New Brunswick created you at some time in the past, I would suspect maybe in the 50s or thereabouts. It goes on, "The authority shall constitute an agency and instrumentality of the municipality creating it." That word instrumentality gives me pause. I interpret that to mean that you are an instrument of the municipality, you are a tool, an instrument to allow the municipality to have created housing for low-income families. But you are an independent public body. Is that understood? You don't have to turn to the municipality at any point and say, "Will you approve my budget? Will you approve this new director of personnel that I'm about to hire?" You have that authority on your own. You're an independent public body. Will you approve me signing this contract with HUD for a couple of $1 million so I can do this and do that? You don't have to go to the municipality for their permission. You're independent, but nonetheless you're a tool of the municipality. The municipality decided that they have a need for affordable housing in the community, and they created a housing authority to pursue that opportunity and to construct and to operate that housing. Drop your eyes down 2 more lines, 3 more lines. "The authority, the housing authority that is, shall consist of 7 members. What does that tell you? The authority shall consist of 7 members. Does it say the authority shall consist of Robeson Village and Schwartz Homes?
The board is the authority.
The point I'm trying to make is that the Board of Commissioners is the housing authority. Anthony, you and the other commissioners are the housing authority. And it had to be that way. There had to be that 7-member housing authority before they can make application to HUD for the funds to build up housing. Okay? The commissioners come first, then the housing comes. Not the housing and the commissioners. Drop your eyes down 5 more lines. In all other counties and municipalities, 5 members shall be appointed by the governing body of the county or municipality, as the case may be, 1 by the mayor or other chief executive officer of the municipality, or in the case of a county, by the director of the Board of Chosen Freeholders or by the chief executive officer of the county, blah, 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 and 1 by the commissioner of community affairs. So 5 members of the 7-member board are appointed by the city council of New Brunswick, 1 by the mayor, and 1 by the commissioner of community affairs. Used to be the governor, but that changed to the Commissioner of Community Affairs. The members shall serve for terms of 5 years until their respective successors have been appointed and qualified, except that of the 5 members first appointed by the governing body, 1 shall be appointed for a term of 1 year, 1 for a term of 2 years, 1 for 3 years, 1 for 4 years, and 1 for 5 years. Why do they do that?
So they staggered.
Stagger.
Terms are staggered when first appointed. Why do they do that? If the terms were not staggered, every 5 years the board would change over
completely.
all 7 members.
Right.
This way, you have an institutional memory that still sits on the board. All right? the member who was first appointed for a period of a year disappears, but there are 6 other members who remember what happened last year.
Right.
Okay? Now, once that one-year member has been replaced, his replacement serves for 5 years. Once the 2-year member has been replaced, his replacement serves for 5 years. Then the terms become unified, but one of the members turn over every year because the appointments are staggered. On page 65, D. 5 lines down. A member of an authority shall receive no compensation, just like we saw in the ACC, but shall be entitled to reimbursement for actual expenses necessarily incurred in the discharge of the duties of membership, including travel expenses. The powers of the authority shall be vested in the members thereof in office from time to time. 4 members shall constitute a quorum. You can't do business or take any action, any formal action, without 4 members of the authority being present. And when there are 4 present, all have to vote in the affirmative for the action. Okay? If only 4 members are present and only 3 vote in the affirmative for the action to be taken, in effect, the minority is approving an action of the Board of Commissioners, and that's wrong. So 4 members have to be present, and if only 4 members are present, 4 have to vote for the action in the affirmative. The authority shall select a chairman and a vice chairman from among its members and shall employ an executive director who shall be its secretary. Paragraph E, the definition of a conflict of interest. No member or employee of an authority shall acquire any interest, direct or indirect, in any housing project or in any property included or planned to be included in such a project, nor shall have any interest, direct or indirect, in any contract or proposed contract for materials and services. My son operates a trash hauling business, and he can do this housing authority. He'll give you a price half of what the other guy charges. You should enter into a contract with my son. Can't do it. Conflict of interest. If any member or employee of the authority owns and controls an interest, direct or indirect, in any property included to be planned or to be included in a project, he shall immediately disclose the same in writing to the authority, and the disclosure shall be entered upon the minutes of the authority. Failure to disclose such an interest shall constitute misconduct in office. A member or employee required by this subsection to make such a disclosure shall not participate in any action by the authority affecting the property with respect to which such disclosure is required. For inefficiency and neglect of duty or misconduct in office, a member of an authority may be removed by the governing body or officer by which he was appointed, but a member may be removed only after he has been given a copy of the charges at least 10 days prior to a hearing thereon. Page 66 at the top of the page discusses the executive director of the housing authority and what his qualifications are. In the second paragraph, he serves at the pleasure of the authority and may be relieved only after not less than 120 days' notice. His qualifications are further discussed in the next paragraph. He has to undertake a course of study promulgated by, he has to get a public housing manager certificate from the National Association of Housing Redevelopment Officials. Page 67 talks about the top of the page, the management and operation of housing projects, and it appeals to efficiency in operation, to keep rents low. They can charge rents in order to, paragraph 2, meet the cost of and provide for maintaining and operating the projects. Page 68, top of the page, the Housing Authority shall establish rules and regulations concerning admissions, and I showed you what those rules and regulations are right here. This is written pursuant to federal law, state law, federal regulation. By the way, that term regulation and law, I've always been taught, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, that the regulation has the full force and effect of law, okay?
Correct.
The law often doesn't say very much. I can think of an excellent example. Congressman Biaggi from Staten Island, before he went to jail, had a
Anything you say after that kind of goes out the window. But go ahead.
had a one-sentence rider included in a bill that was to refinance the bonds of the Tennessee Valley Authority. And the one sentence said that no housing authority can discriminate in the occupancy of public housing by virtue of pet ownership. And that gave rise to a whole big regulation
Pet
about
policy,
pets,
the regulations.
which nobody
Right.
likes.
Right.
You cannot deny a person pet ownership in public housing. You can regulate what is a
Well, pets,
pet,
right.
and how big it can be,
My
and
alligator.
shots and inoculations and licensing,
My
and
pet
where it
alligator.
can poop and where it can't poop and
And
so,
that's the
and
problem
fines
we're
and
having.
whatever. But you can't say you can't live here because you own a pet. One sentence, okay? So the regulations generally is what we do. The law doesn't say much, but when the law is passed, the law goes back to HUD's lawyers and program people, and they start saying, what does this really mean? And they write a regulation. And some of those people have no respect for the English language, by the way.
Tell me about it.
All right, bottom of page 68. The housing authority can sue and be sued. It's a legal entity. Page 69, paragraph B, can invest funds. Paragraph C, can borrow money and receive grants. Blah, 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 blah.
Can we jump up? So,
Firms.
it can't encumber
Right, without HUD approval.
the property without HUD approval. When it says it
Without
can
HUD
borrow money,
I think that's taken for granted.
okay.
With HUD approval.
With, okay.
Who's going to give them a grant but HUD? I mean, Finally, on page 70, in paragraph O, the housing authority has the power to make and enter into all contracts and agreements necessary or incidental to the performance of duties. That's the state law. The rest of it is stuff I don't understand. Page 84. Paragraph 12A-45 sets standards for a course of study for executive directors. And commissioners too, no? No
Yep.
commissioners have to do the same
Yes,
thing?
sir.
You've all been through that. You've gone to Rutgers in the government building there. And on the next paragraph, it's got to be completed within a period of 2 years.
Hey, Bill,
2 years or
Yeah.
18 months?
well, 18 months
18 months
for
for
commissioners, 2 years for
Right.
EDs.
Right.
What if Naro no longer offers the public housing managers? Because that's actually in the law.
Yeah, but other organizations do. They offer comparable courses.
Yeah, but it says or other, but it doesn't, it kind of,
But it specifies narrow in the law, you're right.
right, it says Naro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if Naro says,
We'll cross that bridge when we come
we're
to
not,
it.
we're not getting enough people from New Jersey taking this course or
Yeah,
whatever,
right.
and they eliminate it.
Yeah. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I guess. Okay, now I want to get into the really, really meaty, interesting part of this. You should by now be basically acquainted with how housing gets started, how it gets funded, and what a housing authority is supposed to do. That means what you're supposed to do.
Page.
Page 101.
101. Famous table.
In 1990, I was director of the Office of Public Housing in Newark, HUD's office. Actually, the title was Chief Assistant Housing Management Branch, but it was soon, by means of a reorganization, to be retitled Director of the Office of Public Housing. And we had a number of reviews, monitoring reviews that we did of housing authorities every year. We had a modernization program called the CAP program, the Comprehensive Improvement Assistance Program. We reviewed maybe a dozen housing authorities a year to see whether or not they were spending their funds like they said they were going to, in an effective manner, an efficient manner, and so forth and so on. I sent 3 staff members of mine out to the Passaic Housing Authority, and they asked for certain information. To complete their review, they were denied the information. That's not a good sign. So they came back to the office, and as fate would have it, the Regional Inspector General who was in my office, looking through our files, looking through likely suspects for an audit. And I went to Paul Kane, I remember he was the chief auditor in New York. I said, why don't you do Passaic? This is what just happened, you know? And they agreed. They didn't order the Passaic Housing Authority. And they found all kinds of malfeasance and misfeasance going on, which we'll discuss later. Does the name Jack Kemp ring a bell to anybody?
It's a heck of a football player.
Yeah.
Quarterback for the San Diego Chargers,
That's right.
Buffalo Bills.
Oh, yeah, the HUD secretary. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's like-
I forgot about that part of it. He was a pretty good football player, I know that part.
Congressman from Buffalo,
Yes.
Secretary of
Go
HUD
Bills.
when I was in 1990, and had aspirations to be president of the United States.
Mhm.
Okay? Jack Kemp was secretary. And the scandal that broke when the audit report was issued, front page of the New York Times, front page of the New York Star Ledger, congressional inquiries. There was a congressional committee established to look into the matter. I remember Representative Tom Lantos from California was the chairman of the committee. He was an incredibly intelligent man and a rapier wit. I mean, it just... And Jack Kemp wasn't going to let some little HUD employee in the New York office spoil his chances to be president. So I went into work one Monday morning, and I got a memo from Diane Johnson, who was the acting manager of the office at that time. One line, report to the New York regional office. No explanation.
That's not good.
No, that's not good. You know, no sentence like, if you want to appeal this, you know,
Right,
let me know
yeah.
about it, something
Right.
like that. Report to the,
And bring your keys.
and, yeah.
Yeah.
So I finished my career at the New York regional office. But what happened, I had arranged for the Jersey City, I had arranged for HUD to take advantage of its opportunities under the ACC to take possession of the housing authority, because the housing authority was in default, clearly, for what they did. Take possession of the housing authority. I arranged with a friend of mine who ran the Jersey City Housing Authority. Bob, would you like to run the Passaic Housing Authority for us for a while?
Bob Rigby.
Bob Rigby. He said, sure. And one morning, auditors from the Inspector General's office went to each one of the commissioners' homes with a letter from the Assistant Secretary for Public Housing saying you're no longer a commissioner, you're suspended, you can't take part in any HUD activities anymore, we don't want to see you anymore. Staff from the Jersey City Housing Authority and the Office of Audit went into the Passaic Housing Authority and started pulling out papers, cabinet loads of papers, okay? And telling all the employees who were involved in the issue, go home, go home. The executive director definitely, go home. We don't want you here anymore. We took possession of the housing authority. There was a commissioner whose name was Scruggs, William P. Scruggs. He was vice chairman of the housing authority. And on his letter and on the other commissioner's letter that they got from HUD, it said, we're going to suspend you and we're considering a permanent debarment. If you question this, you can ask for a hearing before an administrative law judge. Well, Scruggs had the temerity to request a hearing before an administrative law judge. Okay, he's the only one who did. And what you have in front of you from page 101 on is the decision of the administrative law judge. His background, his reasoning, and his decision. And I want to go through this with you, because it says a lot about how commissioners do their job. Page 101, initial determination. This proceeding arose as a result of a proposal by the Department of HUD to debar the respondent, William P. Scruggs, from further participation in primary covered transactions and lower tier covered transactions, either as a participant or principal at HUD and throughout the executive branch of the federal government, and from participating in procurement contracts with HUD for a 5-year period. If this debarment proceeding went through, he could do no business with the federal government for 5 years.
Not just HUD.
Any executive branch.
Yeah, not just HUD.
Yep.
Wow.
Page 102. Top of the page. The department, HUD, charges that the respondent, Scruggs, failed to exercise proper, necessary, and diligent control with respect to the activities of the Passaic Housing Authority and its staff so as to adversely affect his present responsibility and the integrity of HUD programs. The alleged failures of the respondent to exercise his authority as vice chairman is claimed by the department in its complaint to have resulted in all those things: payment of excessive compensation, the failure of the housing authority to comply with the modernization program, the failure of the housing authority to properly allocate salary, payments by the housing authority to certain employees for unused vacation time, unused administrative leave, blah, 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 not allowed or authorized under state civil service laws, the incurring of by the housing authority of unreasonable travel expenses, the failure to comply with federal requirements in the procurement of legal services, the failure to maintain property records, the disposition of housing authority assets without an indication of market value, the maintenance of unreliable and deficient internal controls of the housing authority. All those things, the report indicates that Scruggs was guilty of. Page 103, 7 lines down. The government maintains that the respondent's actions constituted a willful failure to perform in accordance with the authority's annual contributions contract with HUD, as well as applicable statutory provisions over a period of years. It states that the respondent's actions also show a lack of business integrity and honesty, which is so serious and compelling in nature as to affect the present responsibility of the respondent, and that such conduct is cause for suspension and debarment. All right, findings of fact. This is amazing.
I have a question. If he left it alone, he wouldn't have gone through this.
But if he never requested a hearing, no, he would just go away. He would be suspended and probably debarred eventually, but page 104, second paragraph. An audit report prepared by HUD's Inspector General's office revealed that excessive compensation was paid to various housing authority employees holding multiple job titles. Now this is what we asked for, my staff asked for. You've got a modernization budget, you're paying salaries to several people. What are the names associated with those titles? That's what they were refused.
Because they'd be able to see.
In 1 year, Paul Marguglio, the authority's executive director, received $161,675 in salary for the positions of executive director, modernization officer, contracting officer, and purchasing agent. He covered 4 positions.
What year was this, 1990?
In 1990. That was a hefty sum 18 years ago. This amount is nearly twice the annual salary budgeted for his basic position of executive director. Non-period,
28 years ago.
28 years.
Yeah.
Non-period, the authority's deputy executive director received $111,505 in 1 year for acting as deputy, modernization specialist, and public housing agency compliance officer. He covered 3 positions. Other employees, including relatives of Marguglio, also held multiple positions and received salaries in excess of amounts approved by HUD. The authority's board of commissioners, of which the respondent serves as vice chairman, approved resolutions authorizing these payments.
Wait, what? In excess amounts approved by HUD?
Yeah.
How does that
The
work?
budget that the housing authority submitted during that time listed all of the positions that the housing
Oh, but
authority.
not the
and their
names.
salary. Not the names.
Aha, okay.
That's what we would
I got you,
we would
I
deny
got
the
you,
names
I
and
got
go on with
you.
the-
So they were like, we have 29 employees, whatever, I got you, okay. So HUD was like, okay,
Yep.
yeah, your mod coordinator gets 25 grand or 40 grand or whatever, and then, I got you.
Yeah, we're all saying.
So approved by HUD, so HUD didn't approve. HUD didn't approve
one
that guy
person to get that. HUD sees the titles,
Right.
the
They approved the
salary.
titles and the salary associated with the title.
Right,
right.
They did not approve that Paul Marguglio would encumber 4 of those positions.
Right.
The
Wow.
Board of Commissioners also approved resolutions authorizing the payment of unreasonable bonuses to authority employees. The Commissioners approved the payment of compensatory overtime for authority employees in cases where they were not entitled. In 1998, for example, Marguglio received an additional $47,000 as a result of this practice. The Commissioners also approved payments to certain employees to compensate them for unused vacation time in violation of the ACC and civil service laws. Between '86 and '88, the Housing Authority paid Marguglio's wife $95,000, even though she only worked 1 day.
But she did a lot of work
But
that
she
day.
did a lot of work.
It was a lot of work that day. That was one long day. Holy crap.
The Commissioners authorized Marguglio to obtain a credit card for travel expenses and a $7,500 expense account with no restrictions. And he charged $21,000 to that credit card during a 3-year period, and no supporting documentation was maintained. Federal housing funds were used to purchase a retirement annuity with $10,000 annual payments.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
105, the Commissioners also provided Marguglio and other authority employees with automobiles for their personal use without restriction.
Hitting over big dog.
Unauthorized payment for legal services. They paid their lawyer $420,000 between 1986 and 1988. They approved his contract with life tenure. You got a contract with Life 10 years, Joe?
No.
Good deal if you
One
can
year
get
at a
it.
time.
You're not doing it.
That's a
right,
good
Joe.
deal if you can
Nope.
get it. Wow.
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 C, failure to comply with federal property disposition schedules. They disposed of 5 automobiles which had caused the Housing Authority $65,600 when purchased in 1984 and 86 for $5. Computer equipment was given to our authority employees for their personal use. No inventory of Housing Authority property was performed. Unreasonable and unauthorized travel expenses. No travel regulations, no records for travel. E, page 106. The authority submitted false reports to HUD that monies were obligated and expended when they weren't. F, the proposed debarment and HUD's takeover of the Housing Authority and resulting criminal charges. As a result of the findings contained in the Inspector General's audit report on the Passaic Housing Authority, the Assistant Secretary of Public Housing issued letters of suspension. HUD also declared a substantial breach and went to court to allow it to take over the assets of the Housing Authority. Additionally, several employees of the authority have pleaded guilty to federal criminal felony charges. These charges included the payment of kickbacks by Michaelis to Marguglio, lying to Congress, lying to HUD officials about multiple job officials, and destroying Housing Authority records. The executive director went to jail for 5 years.
I remember that.
That's it?
Lost his pension
And
could never work for a
only
government
5
agency
years.
ever again.
Did he have to pay back the annuities and all that other nonsense?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
The deputy executive
What?
director got a suspended sentence and was on, whatever, lost his pension and could never work for a government agency.
Government agency again, yeah, I remember that one.
On page 108, the last paragraph on that page, the respondent, and that's the Vice Chairman Scruggs again, admitted in his answer to the complaint that he had primary management and supervisory responsibilities with respect to the operations of the Housing Authority. He also admitted that he was responsible for exercising proper, necessary, and diligent control and oversight with respect to the activities of the authority and its staff. He shared with the other commissioners responsibility for determining policy with respect to employee compensation, the disposition. In other words, he said, I'm responsible for all this stuff. I mean, that's my job as commissioner. And that's correct. Top of page 109. Respondent failed to discharge his duties in a responsible manner. Next paragraph. In his own affairs, respondent has been successful in several different businesses. He owned a liquor business, he had an interest in a supermarket, he had substantial interest in real estate. However, in connection with his duties as vice chair, respondent claims not to have known that the Board of Commissioners could hire and fire the executive director and the authority's counsel. He claims not to know who did any of the hiring at the Housing Authority, who staffed particular positions, or how many employees worked for the Housing Authority. And yet he signed the checks, he signed the resolutions, creating positions, hiring personnel, authorizing extra salaries, and disposing of equipment. 2 paragraphs down, respondent did not know what the term ACC means. Next paragraph. All of these failings together reveal the most telling incompetence, if not willful mismanagement. Such incompetence is a betrayal of the public trust just as surely as are instances of malfeasance. The government cannot tolerate such incompetence and mismanagement in its financial programs, and not only has the right but the responsibility to protect the public interest from it. Respondent has put forth 2 lines of defense. Number 1, he says Paul Marguglio kept us in the dark and duped them into approving resolutions. Next paragraph, and here's the pregnant paragraph, here's the important one. Page 110. These 2 arguments are frivolous. Just as directors of corporations must exercise ordinary care is the standard of behavior. So too must the Board of Commissioners of a Housing Authority. Respondents demonstrated ineptitude falls far short of that standard. Moreover, there was no evidence that the commissioners were deceived by the staff, and the fact that commissioners were required to vote on and sign each resolution makes it highly improbable they could have been deceived had they been exercising any care at all. Look, the judges say, this guy owned a liquor business, he had interest in a supermarket, he had a lot of real estate, he exercised ordinary care in response to those interests, but when it came to the housing authority, he didn't care.
Selective amnesia.
Huh?
Selective amnesia.
So, oh yeah, he didn't care. And all the judge is saying is that the commissioner of the housing authority should exercise the same kind of ordinary care that he exercises, he or she exercises in response to his family and to his private business affairs. In his private business affairs, Scruggs wouldn't have acted this way. So the judge concludes that there's good reason to debar Commissioner Scruggs.
So he debarred him and the chairman, it says here, right?
Yeah, I think
The
he.
chairman was also debarred,
Yeah.
and some of the staff.
So what does the commissioner do? After all, we've looked at, I can identify three responsibilities of the commissioner of the housing authority. And they are oversight, they are direction, and they're planning. Oversight, direction, and planning. Commissioners are stewards of the housing authority's assets. And in that capacity, they exercise an oversight responsibility. Is the housing authority carrying out its statutory mission? Is it providing decent, safe, and sanitary housing for families of low income? Are they doing it in an economical and efficient fashion? How do you know whether they're doing it? Well, there are certain indicators that I'm sure are brought to the attention of the commissioners. There are two assessment programs that HUD does of each housing authority every year. One is called a Public Housing Assessment Program, the other one is called a Section 8 Management Assessment Program. And they both score housing authorities. The Section 8 on 14 factors and the Public Housing Assessment System on 4 factors. And we should get reports from HUD showing you how HUD thinks you've been acting. You review budgets, you have a fiscal audit every year that can be reviewed. HUD will come in here once in a while and do a review. You can initiate some kind of review of your own. I'm not too pleased with the way this is operating. John, will you assign some staff members and get a report done for us? That's your oversight responsibility. Next comes direction. The commissioners provide direction through the formulation of policy. Look, I'm not stupid enough to think that you guys sit down and write all this stuff, okay? John does it and his staff does it. And then they bring it to you for adoption by resolution. But if you don't know what's in there, you're acting just as blindly as Commissioner Scruggs did. And finally, planning. I think the commissioner ought to ask herself, where do I want the housing authority to be after 5 years when my term is up?
Bill, I'm sorry, just for 1 second. Because we now have a quorum, we need to open the meeting with Kevin. I don't know if you're gonna, I know you. I'm sorry, so I have 8:03. I just need to interrupt for 2 seconds so I can open the meeting.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
And again, I apologize, we have the Adult Learning Center, which is the amazing graduate, I mean, what these young people and some older people go through to graduate is just, I mean, tears, you know, it's tears, it's just one of the best things.
I don't believe we met. I'm Bill Elias.
Oh,
Bill Elias, Dale Caldwell.
No, I think we met years ago.
Did we?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was on another housing
Well,
authority.
it's good to see you again.
Yeah.
Chair, in your book, in that little folder is the agenda.
Oh, perfect,
So
okay.
if you want to go ahead and kick us off, I can do the roll call.
Okay, great.
So,
You want to read out the,
well, I can do the notice, I just want to do the roll call. Commissioner
okay, yeah, roll
Gianni,
call, yep.
Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Walde,
Yes.
and Chair.
Yes.
There's a quorum. We also have in attendance Gretchen Spencer, who is the chair of the New Beginnings Tenant Association.
Okay, yeah.
And she's been participating in the board retreat and training since we started. We need to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I can read the public notice, Chair?
Perfect, thank you.
Notice of the meeting was given in the following manner. Notice of the meeting was transmitted and published in the Home News Tribune, Notice of a meeting and a copy of the agenda were filed with the clerk of the city of New Brunswick on June 25th, 2018, and said notice of the meeting and a copy of the agenda were properly posted on the announcement board in the lobby of City Hall at least 48 hours prior to convening this meeting. So the purpose of the meeting obviously is for the board training which we started.
Perfect, great.
Go ahead, Bill, sorry.
Okay. Dale, we were going through what I see as the three functions of the commissioners of the Housing Authority: oversight, direction, and planning. Along the last one, which is planning, and I raised the issue that the Housing Authority Commissioner might ask himself, herself, where do I want the Housing Authority to be after 5 years of my term of office is up? What kind of condition do I want it to be in? Have I seen it grow? Have I seen it get better?
Right.
Okay. Do I see the need for more assisted housing in the city of New Brunswick? Obviously. Are the Housing Authority's physical assets, its buildings, secure for the foreseeable future? And are the Housing Authority's cash assets sufficient to lead me to believe, as Commissioner, that it can do what it is charged to do for the foreseeable future? I have grave doubts about both of those things, given HUD's lack of sufficient funding.
Exactly.
It's terrible.
I've made
Now-
comments at the meetings about that.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
Now, running through all these questions is a common principle which we just discussed before, the principle of ordinary care. Do I, as a Commissioner of the Housing Authority, act with the same care as I act with my own personal assets? Do I act with the same care as I act as a member of a family, or as the owner of a business? Do I exercise those three functions there? Why shouldn't I exercise those three functions with regard to the Housing Authority? Oversight, direction, and planning. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm through. I will entertain any questions you have.
I have a question,
Yes, Gretchen.
because the leases, that's what I want to ask John Clark. I got I got a lease, but somebody brought to my attention the lease and how do I say it? In this one, I never seen this before, but this was given to the girl across the street from me. Okay? And
What is that?
this was in the packet from Zamaya Cobb showed me this. Now, I look at my lease, well, which is old, but it said in there,
This isn't a lease, Gretchen.
well, but what I'm trying to figure out, because it's saying one thing, but with my lease is saying another about tenants and residents staying overnight. You understand what I'm saying? That's contradicting what this is saying. Hold on.
So this looks like it's a orientation package, which basically is general guidance on orientation for a new tenant that moves into housing. And it actually says, it doesn't say lease, it says introduction, it talks about the 1937 Act, it has a Housing Authority's mission statement, it has general family occupancy terms and eligibility.
Yeah.
It talks about guests. So this is a general introductory package. This is not a lease. So
All right.
What's the question?
This is my lease, but in there it says about people staying guests.
So your lease is the contract. This is just a
Okay.
general document. This is a general document that talks
Okay,
about
so
being
they-
nice to your neighbors, keep the outside of the
Right,
property
I
clean.
understand that one. But,
Your contract is your lease.
right, but why,
So where
why
does
is
it
it
say
saying?
overnight?
Yeah, let me show you for a minute. Because I looked at this and said, well, what is this? I never seen this before.
Yeah, that's
I
just a
never-
general
Okay, that's what I'm
orientation
trying to
package.
find
It's not-
out.
That's not your lease.
But-
That basically just says general statements. But do you have any questions about the training? We can talk about
Yeah.
that. But just from a standpoint of the training, because we're not supposed to be
Okay.
conducting business here. We're just talking
Okay,
about-
well, I don't know, that's why I'm asking questions.
Yes.
I wanna find out what this was about, because it said one thing in here, but over here it says something different. I'm trying to figure out why. She had handed it to me late and I didn't get a chance to, she showed it to me earlier. Your dwelling, where it is it? It says about people staying the night in residence. One says 10 days, and the other one says
3, right?
something, yeah, something to that effect. I said,
It should be
well,
no more than 3 days without approval
Right.
right, but
in the lease. I don't know.
But this one
me
says
see if I can
10,
find it.
that one says 10, I can't find it in that one
That
now.
one looks like it's just.
I have a question for you.
One of them
Yes.
Do you
says,
think the 35% be approved?
I was just talking to John about that before the meeting. I think his bill, Carson's bill is dead,
No.
all right? And if it gets approved, it's probably not gonna be approved this year. Now, what they can do, what HUD can do is sneak some of those provisions from the bill into an appropriation bill,
Oh, okay.
all right? And when HUD's budget is approved, and HUD's money is approved, a few little wrinkles about HUD regulations not involved with money can get approved. But John doesn't think that appropriations bill is ever gonna come before Congress.
I can't imagine the Senate would
Yeah.
take, well, I mean, I shouldn't say it was not
So
gonna
in
before.
answer to your question, no.
You could put anything, they put a bill there, today, and it got
Got
shot
it.
down 100 and whatever to 300 and something. But, so this says, Gretchen, just so you know, this says you're welcome to have visitors or guests in your unit with written requests to the property manager. Visitors and guests who wish to stay more than 10 days must have written consent from the property manager.
okay, because in here, I don't know why I can't find
You're going to
it.
answer your question, no, I don't think it's gonna go.
Yeah, oh, okay.
That's what I wanted to
But Bill, let me ask this
Yeah, we'll
question,
find
and
it.
again, I mean, HUD,
Yeah.
HUD is coming
Okay,
down,
that's what's.
you know, on
they
the
were
commissioners and the housing authority. And there really is actually no consideration for the cutback in the amount of funding you have. There's no consideration with the, you know, what HUD and the federal government is requiring housing authorities to do, and yet we're being blamed for those kinds of things. And part of the problem is, and I'm a big believer in, and there's no oversight of the overseers.
Yeah.
And so the overseers can do anything, and frankly, HUD has been incredibly abusive to this housing authority and other housing authorities, yet, you know, we've been cut back about 70%. And so they have commissioners going through training, you know, I spent 6 hours going through the test, the exam, and I didn't even get a certificate from them to say that I completed the thing. And that I mean, it's just, there's such a disregard for volunteers and for what housing authorities are doing. And then the residents, rightly so, complain about this stuff, but it's not our fault. And so at some point, HUD needs to kind of get its act together. And instead of, it's great to kind of, you know, when you point one finger at one person, you have 3 pointing back at ourselves. And I think it's time for, you know, the federal government to recognize the realities of where we are. And part of it is Congress. And I know, there's nothing we can do here. But again, I think media and others can begin to say, the problem is not here.
Yeah.
The problem is not here. It's in Washington.
Now, look at NYCHA.
It's getting worse.
Look at NYCHA.
Yeah.
They're getting hit over the head because they can't provide basic services to tenants, because they have billions of dollars of boilers that need to be replaced, and they don't have the money to do it.
Yep.
Bill, you said every administration comes in with a new massive amount of regulation, and HUD is the first one to say, now you're gonna follow all these regulations and bear down harder and harder and harder on us.
Yeah.
Any questions
I don't
on the
foresee
trading
that.
side? So I do want to thank Bill. That was an excellent job, just from the commission. Thank you. Excellent job.
Excellent job, Bill.
For the commissioner's standpoint, Bill will actually also be doing the staff training as well, looking at our other policies and procedures. So we'll be probably getting together with the commissioners' operations committee at some point in the near future to go over those items. But I want to thank you, Bill, for your time. I want to thank the board members for coming to the training. And Chair, we can move to adjournment, but I do need to see you
I'm gonna read
afterwards.
this, if I have any more questions, I'm gonna read it.
Chair, that's you guys, Bill. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
I'm sorry, wrong seconds. Commissioner Giorgiani?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Walde?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.